think we have another chapter or two, another one or two chapters to go less as addressing the answer the question you kind of asked about the breakdown of the book of Proverbs. I had fully intended to do to catch up on reading on that to kind of spread that out a little bit today, but I didn't get to it. As you can see, different background here. We're at my mother's ongoing uh, fixing of the electrical system of this house and other wonderful things, but we get to see my mother, so that's great. Um, this is this chapter seems to be a little bit different than what we saw, I think, because it's wisdom herself personified, as we've always seen, as a woman, and she's talking to us. She's talking, so it feels like the style here is a little bit different. I felt it a little bit lighter, perhaps a little bit more, yeah, less of the same thing over again. Now, many of the themes are the same, but there's one theme in particular that we'll talk a little bit about later on when we get to it, which I don't think we've really brought up until now. So, as I seem to be, it seems to be fitting us lately. I'm breaking it down, the chapter, into smaller units, mostly according to how Fox, whose commentary I use more than any other one. I usually go out with him in that, and then from time to time when I see something particularly interesting, or I see that the Talmud, today I've picked to feature the Babylonian Talmud, has something that would that takes us in a different direction. And overall, part of my intention, not part, my intention in doing that often is to show what has been done with the text, other than us reading it and just listening to the text from the author, from the editor, from whatever the original tradition was, what he wants to tell us, or how it's been used. And how it's been used in the Talmudic times often it tells us more about Talmudic times than the text itself, right? That's the nature of interpretation of hermeneutics. Um, okay, so the text, Bubba, the text is in the chat box. If you want to see it, we don't put it on the screen, so you can click on the link there. Or read along in a Bible if you have Proverbs on yourself on your own. And and I'll ask Manny, you want to start us off with the beginning, the first unit, with wisdom across the city. Just need you to unmute. Manny, uh, if you could unmute, are you ready to read?
I'm
There
sorry.
you
Can you hear
go.
me now?
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
It is wisdom calling, understanding raising her voice. She takes her stand at the topmost heights, by the wayside, at the crossroads, near the gates at the city entrance. At the entryways, she shouts.
Okay, and even though the quote is in the next section, but it kind of sets it up in lovely parallelism in many different ways. Imagining, what would this be in an animated film? As wisdom at the top, how would this look, right? But this lovely poetic way of I think lifting up our spirits to look up to Lady Wisdom, if I can, we'll call her that right now, Lady Wisdom. Um, uh, Interesting words that are taken from all over biblical literature and sometimes from outside as well. Uh, um, this one of the yeah. Let's take the fourth line. Alei derech, alei darech, beit netivot nitzava. By the wayside at the crossroads, she's taken up a position. Um, that's interesting because we have who usually takes up a position at the crossroads? Anybody in biblical literature? The prostitute. The quintessential case would be Tamar, takes up her position in Genesis 38. And it's kind of that's where that's the yeah, interest, yeah, to be seen, to be, and so this is the counter. of that woman, that wayward woman who is kind of referred to both as as an adulterous woman and as a prostitute in the previous chapter or two. Um, how about you folks? Anybody have any comments or questions on this section?
There's sort of an omnipresence everywhere.
Yeah.
And doesn't that theme of omnipresence, first of all, it usually refers to Yahweh or God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Or yeah, I think very much that look at the difference between Mishle, Proverbs, and the biblical book of Proverbs and other wisdom literature from other traditions is that they're so close to God. And that's going to come up again in the theme of love as well. They're really the wisdom is part of God. It's not different than God. It's part of God. Of course, everything is part of God, I guess, but that might be defined only later in theology. But certainly, yeah, really everywhere. But also in places where people get their word across. I mean, if today we were looking, we would say on billboards. I guess we still think of billboards, right? On TV, on radio, but certainly on social media. And then what where do you find this is like the ad man's or the ad woman's fantasy here, right? Getting the word across. Anything else? Yes, Eileen.
It also seems like she's come out of the shadows. In the past chapters, it was kind of in the night. He saw her from the window. Now she's just out there in the daylight, proudly.
And so that's an interesting effect that the editor of this section of Mishle has done for us, right? Because we saw there's so much repetition that those were text. That's what it felt like, right? They're pre-recorded or they're clips that have been they're different. It's an anthology of sorts of different pieces that have been put together, but not entirely randomly, because the effect that the editor has achieved here is one of building up kind of a suspense and then breaking free. There's this, I feel this, getting out there like a drone. Bubba.
Yeah, I was taught years ago that the prostitutes would hang out in the edge of town or outside of town at the water well, and that's where the expression going back to the well too many times.
Yeah. So, I don't know that the water well was always outside. I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. Is the water well on the outside? I've never thought of it. Um, the prostitutes are often, or the well is the meeting place of the romantic meeting place of couples, which you may be referring to as well. All the various biblical couples that met next to the water. Um, but crossroads don't necessarily mean in the middle of the city. They mean on the outside. In the case of Tamar, which I think that's kind of in the background here at least. Alei derech. That's also from the
It
poem of
does say near the gates at
yeah
the city entrance, so that's from,
yeah
could it be on the outside or the inside?
yeah. And it could be everywhere as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. That word city is there. Lefi keret. Keret is connected to kiryah, but this is I think maybe this might be the only time it appears here as city. But does anybody know the term Neturei Karta from Jerusalem? It's the ultra-Orthodox Haredi group, which is anti-Zionist. They're the group that were kind of had Arafat had his minister for Jews. It was from the Neturei Karta. They're the ones the most extreme anti-Zionist Haredi group in Israel. Their name, Neturei Karta, Keret Karta, in Aramaic is the guardians of the city being Jerusalem in this case. So Keret. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Harold, you want to go on to Wisdom's call? Now we have the quote of what she called out from this message that was being broadcast in so many different venues.
O men, I call to you. My cry is to all mankind. O simple ones, learn shrewdness. O dullards, instruct your minds. Listen, for I speak noble things. Uprightness comes from my lips. My mouth utters truth. Wickedness is abhorrent to my lips. All my words are just, none of them perverse or crooked. All are straightforward to the intelligent man, and right to those who have attained knowledge. Accept my discipline rather than silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies. No goods can equal her.
Okay. Impressions.
Seek knowledge instead of riches.
All right. Or that knowledge is more valuable than riches, which is not, it's both what you said and that, I think. Reminiscent of Eshet Chaya, all right, the woman of valor, her price is above rubies. It's much of the same language. Does that mean that there's a direct connection? Perhaps the poem Eshet, the Women of Valor, which we will get to, who knows? Remember how I used to say that we'll get to something in 7 years from now or 8 years. I don't know when we'll get to the end of it's in the last chapter of Proverbs, and perhaps that's considered to be a late addition. So perhaps that is a way of hinting at that the woman of valor has this wisdom, which is also the price is above rubies.
What do you make of the reaching out to simple ones and dullards specifically?
Yeah. What verse are you? Just a second. I'm looking in.
Lines 3 and 4.
We're going to talk about that word. The word. Well, we'll talk about the word shrewdness above it, but I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, he said, she says to everybody, calling out to all mankind, and then she specifically calls out, especially you, people who are simple and dullards, you ought to listen up here.
And then go down though, then there's also all are straightforward to the intelligent man
Oh,
and
I
right.
see.
Yeah, so I think that's a way of including everybody. In the way that the first section included all geographical locations, I think this section is including all social parts of society. I wouldn't get hung up on the man thing. Of course, we know, I it could have easily translated here one, the intelligent person. The word in Hebrew is mevin, which doesn't necessarily mean a man, it means one.
So she's saying that intelligent people should be able to see this clearly, but maybe simple people and dullards, I need to specifically say, pay attention.
I don't know. Oh, I don't know that there's any more, my cry is to all mankind. It's to the simple ones and to the smart ones. That's how I would see this, as one, all part of the same section, to all of humanity. I don't know that she's singling out the dullards more than how do you see in the language that she prefers, that she's giving preference here to the.
Not giving preference, just sort of pointing them out first. That's all.
Yeah.
It just struck
Yeah.
me that that's the beginning, like,
Right.
listen, you stupid people.
Yeah. And perhaps something else is on your mind, Les, also. Like
Oh,
the last few days, the last week.
nothing's on my mind.
This week that has been in our shouted from every place in our media world. Yes, Richard.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, but and I hate to disagree with Les. I mean, he's a doctor after all, but maybe she doesn't have to talk to the people who are already have wisdom. She's talking to the people who don't have it and saying, hey, oh, the simple people and the dull people, people who are paying attention to wisdom, you people need to wise up. The wise people are already wise.
Yeah, but it's the smart people that cause the most problems.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays.
What's
Maybe
new?
always.
What's new?
Yeah, what's new? Let's take a look at the word shrewdness at the top here, at Hevinu Pitaim or Ma. Do we have any Hebrew speakers here? Or Ma, Dan, does the word arom or Ma? Sasha?
That's not a good thing. It's a
What?
negative thing. It's like deceiving. No, not deceiving.
Deceptive?
Mm,
Sneaky?
Yeah, yeah.
So shrewd is kind of can go either way, maybe neutral, but uh, deceptive, sneaky. You're right, Sasha. In most of biblical literature, it's negative. But who's the epitome of the arom?
Yaakov? No, what do you?
No, the snake, the
Oh,
serpent.
Oh,
The serpent is called the most, that same
Oh.
word, whatever the translation is there. I didn't look it up, but I don't think maybe it'll be shrewd, but maybe it'll be deceptive, maybe it'll be sneaky, something like that. Or there may be a better word. So outside of Proverbs, it's a negative term. In Proverbs, though, it's positive. I was also taken by that. And we're going to see that the rabbis on it a little bit later. We'll look at the Talmud. The rabbis kind of picked up on that. They picked up on why is this word being used at the end of the third line, and then again later on, in the next section. But the one of the interesting things here is the address to all men, and the word that I put in bold there, Elechem ishim ekra. So in a poetic way, to you, O Ishim. And Ishim is men, the plural of Ish, but there's something a little peculiar about it. What's the word we would usually find there instead of Ishim? Anybody know that? Anashim, Anashim. I'll talk about that in a second. Yes, Corrine.
It's like a plea. She begs people to listen, like the Shema. Before you do anything, just listen and be open to what I say. It's a plea to be attentive, to be an active listener before you do anything else.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about the whole section, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Beginning of the section,
It's
right?
not. Yeah, it's active listening. So like being present in the moment.
I like that. You're putting it into very, very, very contemporary terms. To listen, to be present. Yeah, yeah. But and I think that's it exactly. To be open. An old friend of mine died last month in Israel, who I spent many years growing up with in my, I mean, from age 18 onwards, we were in yeshiva together. We were in the army together. Very, very different. I learned a tremendous amount from him, Moshe LeDeutsch. So perhaps we dedicate this study to his memory. Um, when Sasha and I got together, there were a bunch of us younger couples. We went hiking all over Israel even before I met Sasha. Um, he grew up on a farm in the Galilee. His father, I probably mentioned his father, Reb Zev, before, was an amazing old gnarled man who had survived the Holocaust with two of his, I forgot how many children that he had, and his first wife and those children died in the Holocaust. He created a new family with those two daughters, and they're still alive, those two daughters, um, in Israel, and had another 8 kids or 7 kids. One was murdered in a terrorist attack in the Gaza Strip. One of them was part of the group that I was with that started the Moshav, the farming settlement in the Gaza Strip. The murder was after that. A different brother. One of them established an illegal outpost in the Hebron Mountains, or has been involved in that. And Moishe was very, very involved in right-wing settler activity. So we were, I mean, we weren't really speaking over for many years, but I do remember him with great. I learned a lot from him. And why did I go into all this? Because um, Oh, I know why. Because they used to make fun of me. They all did. All those guys made fun of me when I was in yeshiva. I used to say, we should keep an open mind. Tzarich liot patuach, which I got from my parents, right? I think many of us got that from our folks. Keep an open mind. And that was the thing they most ridiculed about me, that I had an open mind. Even though I was Orthodox, I was in the Hester Yeshiva and everything. And that became a joke, and open about not only ideas, but also food. So this openness, thanks. That's Corey, and that awakened me that memory about being open. Yeah, it's a commandment to be open. But back to the word men, ishim. It does stand out a little bit because usually it would be anashim or enosh, b'nei enosh. The difference, no, I won't go into it so much, but ish, isha, man, woman, anashim in plural, and nashim. So ishim is strange, and that gives basis for what we're going to see in the Babylonian Talmud now in Yoma 71a. Yoma is the tractate that deals essentially with Yom Kippur, but many, many other things. And Dan, if you'd read that for us.
The verse states, "To you men, Ishim do I call, and my voice is to the sons of men." Rabbi Berechia said, the word Ishim, although it means men, is similar to the term Isha, woman. It may therefore be taken to refer to these Torah scholars who are similar to women in that they are physically weak and not engaged in many activities that other men are. But nevertheless, they act mightily like men when engaged in Torah study.
Okay. How do we feel about that? Eileen, I'm sure you love that one.
No, I don't.
But interesting, though, as a comment from 1,500 years ago, or whenever Rabbi Brechia lived, 1,800, 1,700 years ago. So first of all, where does it come? The comment comes from the fact that Ishim is a strange word here. And it's usually Anashim or Bnei Adam. So Ishim is very similar to Isha, meaning, the men who have feminine traits, which society has talked about often in derogatory ways, right? But is it a bad thing here, Eileen?
No,
Here it's kind of a good thing.
good thing.
We don't like the Zhlobs, right? The Zhlobs are Esav. The weaklings are Yaakov in that kind of quintessential pairing. I don't know. Others?
Sort of the issue now before in Israel about the ultra-Orthodox scholars going into the military maybe is relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. And that idea that the frailness, the frailty of these folks, but of course that's not their strength. Their strength is in the Torah study. The strength is in the spiritual defense that they're creating according to their beliefs. Okay.
Well-
Yes, Eileen.
Well, if you sat and studied Torah all day long, you would be physically weak. I mean, I look at the little boys who aren't wearing glasses until they're age 8, and then everybody on the block is wearing glasses because they're indoors and they're studying all day long. I mean, you would be physically weak.
I know that's an interesting question. I think I heard that kind of thing from my father as well, who wore glasses as a child, but he was also that scholarly, non-physical kind of he was the manager of the football team or the baseball team at Fairfax High. He never played sports. But is that actually true, Les? Is it true that you get bad eyes from reading too much, that you have to get glasses?
No, I think that people that don't read a lot don't notice that they can't see very well. And I think it's a sensitivity. I know that you can sort of get eye strain in terms of the muscles of the eyes going, double vision and stuff like that. But I don't think the accommodation toward near and far is affected by exercises or that. I don't think.
Yeah, but of course it's a myth. It's out there. It's a belief. It's a thing though. That's what people People have been saying that for a long time. But yeah, so regardless, whether that's just another aspect, another indication that somebody is not, the superhero kind of, the macho kind of a man. Um, so that's kind of that's where Rabbi Brechia chose to bring this verse because it's a little odd, very typical. There's nothing new, right? Very typical midrash to catch on to something which is a little bit unique, a little bit strange about a word or a text, and then to build on that some other idea. In this case, um, by the way, Eileen, it's not just the Torah scholars, right? It's the academics in general, right? You think of Oxford, you don't think of, yeah, I think they have some sort of a rugby team or something, but you don't think of it's always, I always think it's funny that there's like I don't know much about college football, but I think in print in um, no, in Northern California, Stanford.
Stanford.
Stanford, doesn't Stanford have like a good football team? But I don't think of the Ivy League schools of having super sports. Yes, Corrine. Corrine, did you want to say something?
Can you hear me better?
Yes, go ahead.
Speaking of midrash, is the juxtaposition of gender, uh, strength, weakness, Torah study, spiritual strength, and physical weakness, is it done on purpose? Why is it done that way?
I think I have a feeling it's the counterbalance to the Roman ideal of strength. If I had to guess, that's what it would be. Rabbi Brechia in Eretz Yisrael, under Roman occupation, the idealization of the physique of strength, physical strength, the military, and the counter culture of that was, I think the rabbis were developing or selling a counterculture to that. You don't have time. In other words, there are some stories that show the stress between, say, the Am Haaretz, those that were the farmers and probably more physical in the Galil, and those that were Torah scholars. there's some there's some folkloric tales in. Sasha, could you get me a glass of water? So I think that's what that's about. I think it's a counterculture. So Dan, if you could go, let's go on to the second statement that Rabbi Brechia shares with us.
And Rabbi Brechia said further about that same verse. Nowadays, one who wishes to pour libations of wine over the altar should fill the throats of Torah scholars with wine, as it is stated. To you men, Ishim do I call. The use of the phrase Ishim, which is similar to Isha, is used for the altar's fire, suggesting that scholars may be compared to the fire of the altar.
Okay. So what's in brackets there is Steinsaltz's comments, explanation. That's not the Talmud itself, but sometimes I bring it, I try to isolate it so that we know what is actually part of the Talmudic words or not. But that I agree that that's the simple meaning of the text. That is the meaning. Using Ishim, since Ishim is a strange word, I got something else to say, Rabbi Brechi, about Ishim. Don't think of Isha, as I told you in the last thing. Now think of the word Ishe. Ishe is the sacrificial fire on the altar, and what does that bring you to? For instance, the pouring of the wine on the altar, which actually wasn't burnt, but I don't think it was burnt. But this idea, he's looking for things to say. You could imagine Rabbi Brechia. This is the Torah. This is it wouldn't be the Torah portion. It wouldn't be the Haftarah. I don't know. I don't know what the context would be. Maybe just a class on Mishlei, and just bringing that word Ishim in a different direction. But at the same time, lifting up the stature of Torah scholars.
How does Isha relate to Aish?
Isha is just the form of the word that's used in the Torah when it's talking about that altar fire on the altar. It's a kind of offering. It's the Isha offering. It's called the burnt offering. Yeah. So that's why Isha and Aish. Yeah. Okay. So the idea here with the Talmudic section was to, again, not to, I don't think this doesn't illuminate our understanding of the paragraph in any way other than to see what a unique word touched off hundreds of years later. To me, that's interesting as well. That's just as interesting. Okay? Any comments or questions? Rita Claire, would you like to read the next section for us?
I have a little problem with my throat right now, so I'm sorry I can't.
Okay, Charles, would you like to read?
Mute, there, I've unmuted. Where are we at? Tell me.
8:12 to 13 at the bottom of the page.
I, wisdom, live with prudence. I attain knowledge and foresight. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, to hate pride, arrogance, the evil way, and duplicity in speech.
Okay, so here we have the wisdom is again brought towards God, towards the Lord, is kind of connected to. We're going to see a different way later on, but the word that's been emphasized here that's is with prudence is that same word orma that above was translated as shrewdness. Prudence, shrewdness are not exactly the same thing, but of course any word, especially in a poetic context, can mean many different things from a semantic field. And prudence is certainly not negative either, is it, right? So neither of these are, but this is just and there are other examples in this first part of the book of Mishlei that we haven't really spoken about, but it has come up in the past as well, I think.
Doesn't prudence mean caution?
Yeah, but it's being smart, right? Being in a way, yeah. It's not the same as shrewdness, but it's not entirely, it's from the same kind of, I think, semantic field. I don't know. It would be interesting to see the notes of the committee of the Jewish Publication Society who translated this, because that's the translation that is here for you. There are notes for the one that was done on the Torah. They're not great notes. It's a small, slender volume. I've taken it out before to show somebody at the house, maybe Harold, it was you, I forgot. It's Harry Olitsky, who was the chair of the committee, and he, so prudence is self-discipline. Yeah, but of course, again, context is everything. In any case, we don't have the notes and why they chose this one, but I did want to again bring a different Talmudic section that decided to talk. Somebody in the Talmud realized this word orma is usually negative, and here it's being used in a positive sense. We can all agree that here, in the context of this chapter of Proverbs, it's in a positive sense. So let's turn the page and look at this passage from Sotah. Sotah is the section of the Talmud that deals with the woman who is suspected of committing adultery. So, Dan, if you could read this for us.
Just a note, I read ahead on this one, and it just blows me back, but here we go. The Mishnah states, from here, Ben Azai states, a person is obligated to teach. I guess this is Steinsaltz's comment.
Yeah.
His daughter, he teaches daughter Torah, so that if she drinks and does not die immediately, she will know that some merit of hers has delayed her punishment.
No, this is in this case it's not Steinsaltz. It's the full quote from the Mishnah, as opposed to just the 3 words that would be in the Talmud itself.
I see. Okay.
So this is the quote from the Mishnah from the 3rd century Common Era, which is being treated in the 5th, 6th century, 6th century Common Era, edited into the Talmudic discussion.
That makes it a little better, but not much. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer says,
wait, hold on. So let's just talk about it for a second. So what's behind the Mishnah in our own view before we go on? Yeah, you're unhappy. It makes it better, right? Well, what's the idea behind it?
to, well, to explain the original text, for one.
No, the Mishnah itself is not explaining a text. The Mishnah is saying, Ben Azai is saying something. Listen, folks, when you're raising a daughter, be careful not to do this because of this.
Okay.
Right? So what's the problem? What's the connection between promiscuity and learning Torah? Anybody? Not in our view, folks, but in people's minds. I'm not talking about our own opinions, right? But let's go back 2 generations, 3. I think everybody here had the opportunity. Maybe, I don't know, Rita Claire, I don't know. But was there not a view at some point in some of your lifetimes, women who are here, that said, better stay at home? You don't need to get that education. So I think it's twofold. The education brings you out into the world physically, going to school, and second, gives you this ability to, first of all, to be uppity, right? To disagree with your husband, with the man. Yes, Rita Claire. Now you have a voice, right?
Well, I'll try. It's very interesting. My mother was illiterate. She did not learn to read or write any language. And she came to this country when she was 13. There was really no excuse for it. So education was not stressed in my family. It was my Jewish friends that made a bigger influence on me because I didn't dare bring home a bad report card because they were also smart. When I was very young, I wanted to go to Hebrew school. My mother finally said I could go, and I enjoyed it so much. And then she decided because I was a girl, it was not important, and it would cost too much money. So I really lost out. I'm getting an education now in my old age.
Well, we're happy to be part of that correction, historical correction. But so the reason though that was given was that you're not worth your education is not worth the investment that put it. It's a little
Right.
bit, which is a little bit different than this. It's still indignant, right? But this is saying no, it's dangerous. I mean, it kind of reminds us of what we read about Afghanistan, maybe other countries, but I think Afghanistan is the story that is talked about so much, possibly because that guy that built the schools there, I forgot his name, the books we read.
What about the earlier chapters that talk about this, talking to sons and how susceptible they are to evil? And basically they can't be trusted, and they have to be reminded all the time to walk this, right path, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's sort of interesting in that I guess it says the daughters are also susceptible. I don't know.
We had much less about the daughters. The emphasis is on the sons. I would say just because society emphasizes education of the son in general everywhere in the kind of world that maybe not, maybe in Asia, someplace it was different, but this is, so first of all, this is the Mishnah. This isn't part of this is not part of the same book of Proverbs where we're still kind of, we haven't got to our context yet. But this is saying, the book of Proverbs is actually saying something different than this, that they have to learn Torah. I mean, if you take it as a whole, the boys have to learn Torah so they won't be susceptible. And here, Ben Azai seems to be saying, maybe this is what you were saying, Les, is saying the opposite, right? The more that the girls will learn, they'll be susceptible. So let's leave it right now. I just want to show that it's not entirely different about lots of societies that were not so far off from us in time that not only did not value the education, but perhaps it wasn't a good idea, right? The more it'll go to her head. There's so let's see, because we're really here to look at what the Talmud has to say now. Go ahead.
So Rabbi Eliezer says, anyone who teaches his daughter Torah is teaching her promiscuity. But does it really enter your mind to say that teaching one's daughter Torah is actually teaching her promiscuity? Rather say, it's considered as if he taught her promiscuity.
Yeah, this is a common device used in rabbinic. In other words, you have this hyperbolic statement of somebody, for instance, one who does not visit the sick deserves to die. So then the next line is, really deserves to die because not visiting the sick? So, well, it's as if he deserves to die because he caused the death by not coming to visit the person and didn't know what they needed. Then eventually he caused the death, that kind of a thing. It's kind of toning down the extremism in the text. But now let's see what Rabbi Abahu says about Rabbi Eliezer statement. Go ahead.
Rabbi Abahu says, what is the reason for Rabbi Eliezer's statement? It is as it is written, I, wisdom, dwell with cunning. That's Orma again, right? Which indicates that once wisdom enters into a person, cunning enters with it.
So this is different, right? The translation here on purpose is different because that's the intention. Here, Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Abahu's explanation, is saying the use of the word orma is still negative here. Okay, go ahead.
So Rabbi Eliezer fears that the woman will use the cunning she achieves by learning the wisdom of the Torah to engage in promiscuous behavior.
Right. So you understand, she's going to be a lawyer, right? She'll learn how to, a lawyer or a good accountant, right? How to work through, to know the loopholes.
And the rabbis who disagree with him, what did they do with this verse? I, wisdom, dwell with cunning. How did they interpret it?
I'm not sure what the he is here. I'm not sure the translation is good, but anyway, maybe it's they required. Anyway.
Okay. He requires that the verse for that which Rabbi Yosei, son of Rabbi Hanina, states, interpreting the word orma as nakedness rather than cunningness. As Rabbi Yosei, son of Rabbi Hanina, says, the matters of Torah do not endure except in one who stands naked for them, as it is stated. I, wisdom, dwell with nakedness, orma. So it's different, translating it differently again.
Right.
This means that the wisdom dwells only in one who is prepared to give away all his possessions for the sake of Torah study.
Now, this is interesting. Or arom, in the case, there's a play on words in that in chapter 3 of Genesis, where it introduces the Nachash, the serpent, as being the arom of the most of all beings. And then, of course, what happens after the serpent leads to them, Adam and Eve eating of the fruit, and what's the first thing that comes? They realize after they eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge that they're naked, right? And because there's a connection between Ayin Resh Mem means both cunning and sneaky and all the things that we've been here, but it also is connected to the word nakedness. Now, it could be that stems from two different words because, yeah. Not okay. There are two different ayins. Now I opened up the thing. How do I get out of this now that I started? Well, another time. But the fact of the matter is, ayin resh mem is a root that sometimes goes in the directions of cunningness or sneakiness or shrewdness or prudence, and sometimes goes in the direction of nakedness. So that's the connection. But what they do with it in the Talmud, that's what's most interesting, right? Instead of it being something negative as being naked, it becomes a positive. Make yourself naked, which means live like a monk in an order, or a brother in a monastic order who gives away all possessions, that kind of a thing, right? And this is in praise of the poverty of the sages. kind of a twisted way of getting there. And just to finish off this section, a verse which is from Job, but still, Dan, if you could just finish off this section.
Rabbi Yochanan says, the matters of Torah do not endure except in one who considers himself as one who does not exist, as it is stated, but wisdom, it can be found in nothingness.
And not exactly our verse, right? But any understands, any comments or understanding of this? What I understand is that you've got to set the ego aside. I think the point here is set your ego aside. And Corinne, this goes back to the point you were making beforehand. To be open, to be listened, to really compassionately listen. If you're in a conversation, as I think many of us, I hope, try to practice, at least from time to time, we're aware of it, is not just waiting for our turn, or not, in other words, not waiting for our turn to share our story or our opinion, but actually listening and trying to internalize. And to me, this is a great, it's a great challenge now. And this is something that I spoke about often 8 years ago, at the beginning of those 4 years, is that, and I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I feel there's a need to actually listen to what half of this country thinks, maybe not a certain percentage of them or a Michiganer, but they can't all, we can't classify. I don't think we can honestly say that half of this country are people who have lost their minds. I don't think that's the solution. Or in Israel, that the people who are against the hostage deal, they've absolutely lost their minds, or they're totally self-serving, whatever. I think we need to find a way, each of us in our own way, or as a group as well, to really listen, to really set our own egos aside. That's what I get on. That's why I kept on this last section, what Rabbi Yochanan says, even though it has nothing to do with Proverbs. Any reactions or comments? Okay, then. So, Les, you want to read for us 8, 14, 16?
Sure. Mine are counsel and resourcefulness. I am understanding. Courage is mine. Through me, kings reign and rulers decree just laws. Through me, princes rule, great men and all the righteous or earthly judges.
Okay, any reactions? And before, yes, Bubba, did you want to say something? No.
Well, there's an implication that somehow the rulers are wise,
Yeah.
righteous, which of course they aren't always.
Right. It's something, but it is something in the ideal of our culture, isn't it not? If the quintessential king was not David really, but Solomon, the one who brought peace in the reign, Solomon is lifted up because of his wisdom in the book of Kings, and also we talked about that in the first chapter at the introduction to the book of Proverbs. And I think it's yeah.
Well, certainly it's the expectation of the people that the
Yeah.
rulers will be just.
Will it be just, and I think also smart, understanding, yeah, courage. Okay, so let's just take a look at that last term there, unindivim kol shoftei tzedek, either the great men and all, either the righteous judges or the earthly judges. This is not a case of one word that can be explained in different ways. This is a different point entirely that I don't really talk about a lot, but I think it's important. We think of our Tanakh, our Hebrew Bible, as being more or less, I think most Jews would say, well, that's the text, right? Now, we know, of course, we've been studying together for many years. We know that there's alternate texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that there's translations in the ancient Greek Septuagint that reflect a different text. We sometimes can see how a mistake was made, but this is interesting because in different Hebrew manuscripts that we have that are part of the Masoret, what we call the Masoretic tradition, that's the Hebrew text that doesn't include Dead Sea Scrolls, doesn't include what was before the Septuagint. The tradition of Hebrew texts that we have from the second half of the first millennium going forward. So for instance, 7th century manuscripts and later, even later, have two options here, not in the same script, in different scrolls, we'll have a different word here. Now, you might say, okay, well, that happens, and we know that happens, but we don't usually expect it to be so late. We expect that to happen much earlier in the development of the written text. And you can see, for those that know Hebrew lettering, especially Tzedek and Eretz are not all that different. The Dalet and the Resh, we start with that, are very, very similar, the way they're written. And the way Atzadi and Aleph have the structure of those two letters are rather similar compared to the rest of the alphabet, as is a tzadi and a kuf. So because they both go down. So we usually don't see that much variation. It's all three letters are different, but it's interesting that that difference in text survived through not only in the beginning of the Middle Ages. There's some of the rabbinic interpretations, the medieval and rabbinic commentaries, they have they go either way. They translate, they comment on one word or another, meaning they had in front of them different text. Now, it's not the Torah, so it's not as sacred, but still, it's part of the Hebrew Bible. And through the Middle Ages, there's alternate text. That, to me, that's an important point to make for those that are often say, well, but that's the text. That's the way it is, yeah, I mean, I'm nothing new. It's just another example of it. Okay, go ahead and read another one for us, would you?
Those who love me, I love, and those who seek me will find me. Riches and honor belong to me, enduring wealth and success. My fruit is better than gold, fine gold, and my produce better than choice silver. I walk on the way of righteousness, on the paths of justice. I endow those who love me with substance. I will fill their treasuries.
Okay, any comments?
There's a payoff.
Yeah, it's worthwhile. Get that degree, you'll get a higher salary, right? Anything else? Okay, so a small comment about the word substance that I've emphasized here. Based on, for those that know Hebrew, lanchil or havai, to give on, to endow those those devoted to me, says wisdom, those who love me. Oh, we didn't do the love thing. Oh, well, we'll talk about it in a second. Those who love me, then they will have, what will they have? Yesh. And for those that know, is there anybody here that speaks modern Hebrew? Guess maybe not, right? But yesh is part of usually part of a phrase, like a genitive, with a genitive. So yesh li, I have. It means having something, but it's extremely strange. Maybe the only place, I don't know, that you have it in this way, one of the few places at all in the Bible, that it is a thing, that substance, something that we would say. So it's an interesting occurring, but again, to the rabbis in the Talmud, it also caught their attention. Go ahead, Dan, and read from Sanhedrin, the section of the Talmud that deals with court cases and things like that.
Rav Dimi said, "What's the reason that you're not familiar with matters of Agadah? As they say in the West, in the name of Rava Bar Mari, the Holy One, blessed be He, will give every righteous person 310 worlds, as it is stated, to bequeath to those who love me substance, yesh, and I will fill their treasuries." Numerical value of yesh is 310.
Okay, so to break this down, first of all, in the West, those in the West means anybody when the Babylonian Talmud says the West?
Israel.
Right, the land of Israel. And so that's not an important thing, but just to understand and what's interesting, what he does here, Rava Bar Mari, he takes these words, which are uttered by wisdom, but puts them in the mouth of God, right? And and that shows how in a rabbinic reading, the two are totally connected to each other. Apropos what Les brought up in the first comment, the first section as well. The two are together. Another way of understand. Oh, and then he doesn't know what to do with the word yesh either. He says, this is strange. Oh, so if we got a strange word, what's a great way to explain it away or to make sense of it? Break it down into gematria, to the numerical value. And later commentators, later Jewish interpretation sometimes goes really crazy with this, especially Kabbalistic and Hasidic writings. But you do have some in the Talmud, and this is one that tells you something you had no idea existed. That there are 310 worlds, right? And why 310 of all worlds? Because that happens to be gematria of Yesh, Yud Shin. Now, a little bit reminiscent of another religious tradition that talks about how many different worlds or other traditions. Um, but it's meaning to say that you might not have it here, but you'll have it in the world to come or the worlds to come. Finally, my last comment for today is this idea of love. Those who love me, I love. This idea of that wisdom is it's a romantic relationship. It's an eros. This love of wisdom, love of knowledge. I forgot if it's uh, Dewey maybe in those 2 years that I was in the school of educational leadership, senior educators. We did a lot of Dewey with Professor Seymour Fox of blessed memory, and I think the eros of education maybe is from Dewey. I don't remember, but this idea of having in mind this ongoing loving relationship between a human being and wisdom itself, and that's very similar, of course, to the relationship with God, right? Relationship with other people as well. So if we always think of, those two things that Jesus paraphrased the Torah about love, that as if first of all, as if in many minds it comes from Jesus. Jesus quoting both Leviticus and Deuteronomy, you should love the Lord your God, Deuteronomy, with all your heart, and you love your neighbor as you would love yourself. Those two aspects of love, this is adding a third thing, right? And also love wisdom. I kind of like that here. Any comments, parting words, questions, disagreements? No kvetches. No kvetches. Okay. All right. Well, we hope everybody is all right. This is, I didn't, when I'm not in my usual space with that oil painting that woman, that our friend in Stockholm painted for us, which is usually behind me, with the abstract vase of flowers, I'm less in my state, but we certainly want to be mindful not only of the somewhat challenging last days from a media point of view here in the United States. Of course, we want to be mindful of the fact that 3 young women were released from captivity and are at home with their loved ones. We want to be mindful of the fact that there are still many, many other, we don't know how many alive, how many are no longer alive. Certainly, I'm personally thankful that the fighting is right now, is on a hiatus. I don't believe this is the end of it. Unfortunately, I would like to think that maybe something will happen, and perhaps, everybody, perhaps all of us that have a particular view of this particular president, we might find ourselves surprised to see some sort of silver lining. I don't know, but I want to be open to it. I do want to be open to it, and I want to hear. And I hope that our study of Proverbs works on each of us in different ways, so that we are, as Corrine pointed out in the beginning, that we are present, fully present and listening. Thank you for being fully present and listening, and I hope I listened as well, although I know I have a tendency. And Charles, have we told you yet that we used to have a desk just like that?
No.
Sasha and I had a desk like that her brother and sister-in-law of blessed memory had in Amsterdam, and they were throwing it out. right? Is that the story? They were gonna throw it
My
out?
sister-in-law found it in the, yes, in the flea market, and then they were gonna throw it out.
Yeah, she found it in the flea market. They had it in their house. It's a beautiful, probably older than that piece, but they were gonna get rid of it. It had wormholes in it. It was filled with like worms anyway. So we had it. We said, well, we'll take it. And that's what we did. Any gifts that we got for our wedding in Amsterdam, we put in a crate we had packed together with this. And I forget if I think we did it already in Amsterdam. We had it treated. I guess it was steamed or something, with some material. And we have that. And who has the desk now? Abigail?
Yeah.
And one of our daughters has that desk. It's been broken and rebuilt many times, but yours looks in excellent shape.
No, it's wearing out, but it's fun to have, and it keeps things in some sort of order, not very much, but some sort of order.
Yeah, it never had that effect on us. More than anything else, it was great because we could roll it down. So when we had guests over,
Right.
nobody saw what was going on. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here and see some of you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Okay.